IMSA schedules are out, and 2 regular stops are off the calendar. Meanwhile, 2 of the schedules leave us with some big question marks. And we get closer to knowing what IMSA series will support NASCAR on the streets of Chicago. Buckle up, because you're about to go off in the S's. On the Friday of last weekend's race at Road America, IMSA held their yearly State of the Sport address, where they go about announcing any changes upcoming for the next season. They go over a few housekeeping bits, but one of the big things that they release, and one of the most anticipated things that they release in this meeting, is the schedule for the following year's races. And let me tell you, there's a lot to unpack here and talk about throughout the entire series of IMSA as they released all of their calendars. Let's get into them right now. We're going to start off with the IMSA WeatherTech Sportscar Championship schedule, and there are some changes for 2023. You see the standard races. We have the Rolex 24, of course, at Daytona on January 26th to 29th, March 15th to 18th. We're going to start things off with the IMSA WeatherTech Sportscar Championship schedule, and their 2023 version has changes upcoming next year. Most notably, you're going to see Mid-Ohio is off the schedule completely. Of course, this was expected due to recent weeks' news. We also notably see no Detroit on the schedule for the WeatherTech Championship. John Doonan did mention that he wants to bring the WeatherTech Championship back to the streets of Detroit, hopefully in 2024. But of course, we will have to wait and see what this new circuit even looks like and what the quality of racing is like on it, because there's certainly some question marks surrounding what the quality of racing will be like. Regardless, though, the staple at the beginning of the season, the 24 Hours of Daytona, will take place in January on the 26th to the 29th. The Roar Before the 24 will take place the weekend before that, just as it did this year. The second race of the championship will remain the 12 Hours of Sebring, but unlike in 2022, where IMSA teamed up with the World Endurance Championship to run Super Sebring, this will not take place this year. The 12 Hours of Sebring will take place 1 week after the World Endurance Championship's 1,000 miles of Sebring, so maybe give a little bit more leniency to the drivers that do double duty in this. It's going to be disappointing for racing fans not to get to see both of those series race at the on the same weekend, but still lots of great racing at Sebring around that time. 1 month later, we'll hit the streets of Long Beach for the GTP, GTD Pro, and GTD categories on April 14th and 15th. Followed up exactly 1 month later at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. There will be 4 classes there, with the LMP3s not making the trip. This is a change on the time slot for Laguna Seca. They move 2 weeks later on the calendar, and they just move into the slot that Mid-Ohio vacated. Watkins Glen is where Round 5 will take place on June 22nd to 25th. All 5 categories will be there as expected. Round 6 heads north of the border to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Notable schedule change here, it is 1 week later than it has been in recent years. It is also not a back-to-back with the 6 Hours of the Glen anymore. You will also see that there are going to be no LMP2s that will be present at CTMP. This schedule change means that it will not take place on the 4th of July or Canada Day long weekends either. This slight schedule adjustment has bumped Lime Rock Park back a week as well. They will now take to the track there only the GTD Pro and the GTD cars on July 21st and 22nd. This will be followed up by the race at Road America, with all 5 classes participating on August 4th to 6th. On August 25th to 27th, the GTD Pros and the GTDs head to VIR for Round 9, and Round 10 will take place at the highly anticipated date at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on September 15th to 17th. All 5 classes will be taking place in that race, as well as Round 11 at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for the season-ending Motul Petit Le Mans from October 11th to 14th. With the addition of Indianapolis, this did force IMSA to push Petit Le Mans back 2 weeks in order to accommodate the schedule changes. And as expected, the Michelin Endurance Cup races remain unchanged, with those 4 iconic races remaining on there. Have to wait and see. 2024 schedule might be interesting, with the rumors around that Indianapolis race potentially being extended to be a 5th Michelin Endurance Cup race, but we'll keep our ears to the ground for more details on that and let you know if we hear any other news about that. My overall thoughts on this are great schedule. You know, there's no back-to-back weekends on it, which is nice. I know I went to both the Watkins Glen race and the CTMP race this year, and with those being back-to-back, I mean, I found it busy enough as myself being a fan. I can't imagine what it was like for crew members. I don't know if they would have enjoyed it. Quick pack up, move it over, especially for some of those cars that got into accidents, you know, logistics problems that could have caused as well. So good to see that there's a little bit more of a breathing space there for teams. I'm also not really a huge fan of the month-and-a-half long break after Daytona, and then followed by a month after Sebring to Long Beach, and then another month to Laguna Seca. I don't like how spread out that early part of the season is. I understand why it's so spread out, but it would be nice if we could compress that a little bit. Maybe move one of those summer races, like maybe a VIR or something like that. I understand that we're dealing with different climates at this point, but it would be nice if they could find some sort of a way to shuffle one a little bit earlier in the season, maybe cut a couple of weeks, you know, maybe it's a 3-week break instead of a month break, and just maybe that helps out a little bit with this sort of feeling. But overall, can't complain at all about the schedule. It's going to be a great 2023 season for the WeatherTech Championship. And one of the things that you love to see as well is crew members voicing their opinion. Bozy Tatarevic, hopefully I pronounced that right, a Vassar Sullivan crew member, had this Twitter thread that he released when the schedule came out, and just had some overall thoughts on it from the point of view of a crew member. I'll link the entire thread in the show notes, but basically he liked seeing the Roar and the Rolex, of course, being on back-to-back weekends. Everybody's already there, so I guess I was wrong. There is still a back-to-back, but it's a little bit different. Those being on back-to-back weekends, welcomed from a crew member's perspective. The extra week between Long Beach and Laguna Seca likely means that lots of these teams are going to opt to test at the newly repaved Laguna Seca. Talked about that on last week's show, how there was approval given for that. Team members doing the Indy 500 are also going to have very little conflict with this schedule, which is a big plus. And we also sometimes forget about the crossover between IMSA and IndyCar, and lots of the teams doing both. So good to see that, and the same goes for Le Mans. One of the big discussion points this year in Detroit was crew members having to choose, and drivers especially, having to choose whether to do the practice day at Le Mans or this race at Detroit, and it was difficult for some of them to be able to make that work with schedules. So good to see that's not going to be a problem next year. Also, spending a holiday weekend at home going to be much appreciated, with the 4th of July weekend now being an off weekend for the teams and their crews. And just overall, Bozy said that well laid out schedule. It allows team members to do the Indy 500 or Le Mans if they wish to do so, and just lots of small welcome changes that hopefully makes these crew members, drivers, everybody that's involved in IMSA, hopefully makes their life a little bit easier. Tell me though, what are your thoughts on the schedule changes? Let me know those in the comments below. The Michelin Pilot Challenge schedule also gets to see some changes in 2023. Starting off, you got your standard races still. They're following WeatherTech, of course, throughout the entire season. They're going to Daytona, Sebring, Laguna Seca. They're not going to the Long Beach Grand Prix. That's normal as well. Big change, though, when it comes to Detroit. So we talked about WeatherTech not going to Detroit. But the Michelin Pilot Challenge will be heading to Detroit on June 2nd and 3rd. That will be the Grand Sport only category that will be there. They continue on Watkins Glen in late June into Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and then we see Lime Rock Park there as well. It is a 10 race schedule for each one of these categories, so that means that TCR gets a weekend of their own as well. They are going to be heading to Lime Rock Park to support the WeatherTech Championship and their GT only race that happens there. Honestly, great move by IMSA on this. I'll talk about that in a second. They continue on Road America, VIR in late August. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway round for them will be 4 hours in length, along with the race at Daytona. That is a regular occurrence. But this Indianapolis Motor Speedway race being 4 hours, this adds, there was a second 4-hour race on the calendar this year. It just happened to take place at Road America. So that has been moved to Indy. This is going to be a late afternoon into evening race for the category, which is going to be great to see. They're going to be able to test some logistics for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, see how the light system and everything like that is going to work for hopefully a longer race there for the WeatherTech Championship in 2024. And then, of course, the season wraps up at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, October 11th to 14th. Of course, there are some small changes here. There are some big changes here as well. But the notable ones are Detroit being added for the Grand Sport category. Going to be interesting to see those guys run around there. I honestly think it's a pretty good choice. Those the GT4 cars, you know, they should take to it just fine. We don't usually see a proper street race for the Michelin Pilot Challenge, so that's going to be fun to see. We're also going to see TCRs only at Lime Rock Park. I love this move. I think this is a great move by IMSA. We saw at Lime Rock Park the Michelin Pilot Challenge race. It was difficult for those TCRs in Sector 1 of that track. They are faster than those GS cars, and it caused some problems with the leaders. There was contact late in the race there with the grants between the GS and the TCR cars. I think it's a great move by IMSA to make this TCR only at Lime Rock Park. Big plus there, and ultimately they were able to maintain their 10 race calendar. Indy should be a fun one for these guys as well, with it being a 4-hour race. Going to be one of those highlights on the calendar for them. Overall, lots of good stuff here for the Michelin Pilot Challenge coming next year. Next up, the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge. Now, we know where the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge, we know where 5 of the 6 races where they're going to be running are, but we still have one that is to be determined. They are going to be racing for sure at Sebring International Raceway on March 11th and 12th, 1 week before the WeatherTech Championship and Michelin Pilot Challenge head there. That is interesting to note because that will be a support race to the 1,000 miles of Sebring by the World Endurance Championship. Their next race will come 2 months later at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, followed up by the round at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in July. They'll also be supporting at VIR at the end of August, and their season will wrap up with Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, October 11th to 14th. Some big changes for this series as well, even though it is a new series, kind of technically, with the those GSX cars or the GT4s being added to run in with the LMP3s. There's no Daytona race this year. Last season, they ran a race on the Roar before the 24 weekend. That was their first race of the season. That seems to be gone for this year. They're also now going to be racing on the 1,000 miles of Sebring weekend. That is new. They, of course, historically have raced with the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship as a supporting act, so they're going to play support for the World Endurance Championship. And there was also some speculation that's come out of this schedule announcement with that one race that's left to be announced. And this is coming from Bozy, who we talked about just a moment ago, the crew member on the Vassar Sullivan Lexus team. He said that there is speculation in the paddock that they could be going to race with NASCAR on the streets of Chicago. Now, this might just make sense. That Streets of Chicago race is going to take place on the 4th of July weekend, which is historically when the race was at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Those cars are going to be in Chicago. It's not exactly a quick drive from Chicago up to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where it's guaranteed that they're going to be racing on July 7th to 9th, the weekend after, but that's definitely doable. And if they'll be all packed up on Saturday, that's when the races will be taking place anyways. They get packed up, they truck those things up to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. So I think that this has some momentum behind it. I think they could be the IMSA series that's racing at Chicago. And honestly, you talk about kind of doing a revamp to one of the series. This is exactly what I think you would want to do from IMSA's perspective. Put it in the spotlight. Put it with Chicago. Make it one. Give drivers and teams a reason to really want to run in that. So I think we're going to see these guys go to Chicago as well. But do you think something different? Let me know on Twitter or in the comments below. The other series that has yet to fully announce their schedule is the Mazda Idemitsu Mx5 Cup. They will be heading, of course, to Daytona for what is arguably the best IMSA race of the season when they hit the high banks of the Daytona road course. Of course, they're supporting IMSA that weekend. This will take place on the Rolex 24 weekend. Next up, they head to the streets of St. Petersburg on March 3rd to 5th. They are supporting IndyCar there. Next race for them will be June 23rd to 25th and the 6 Hours of the Glen weekend. This is followed up in August with the support race for IMSA at Road America. Notably, they are not supporting NASCAR at Road America this year. NASCAR is not racing at Road America. They'll support IMSA as well at VIR and at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta to wrap up their season. There is a to be announced race here. I wonder if IMSA might just be holding this back to create a little bit of speculation on who might be going to Chicago, but I kind of have a hunch that it is going to be that VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge that goes to Chicago, and I think Mazda is going to go and support IMSA at Sebring. We saw in 2020, I think it was, or 2021, the amazing race finish that we had at Sebring, 3 wide to the start finish line. It was a great race the entire time. I think IMSA is going to stick the Mazdas at Sebring as a supporting act there as well. The Sports Car Challenge, VP Racing Fuels, isn't going to be there for that IMSA weekend, so I think Mazda is going to be there to support. And then lastly, let's quickly touch on the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series. They will support IMSA at Laguna Seca, Watkins Glen, VIR, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Here you can see all of the series and where they are going to be racing, when they are going to be racing, and who is going to be supporting what. It is a overall 14 race weekend schedule next year. Should be plenty of great racing to be found. And we still have yet to hear from what the Porsche Carrera Cup North America is going to be doing. They will announce their schedule at a separate date. We'll keep an eye out for that, and of course I will talk about that schedule when it is released. Well, the schedule was not the only news to come out of the IMSA State of the Sport. You can catch up on all of the news from Road America Race Weekend right here. Until the next one, though, I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.